why am I doing this, right? This is incredibly hard, and it just became a lot harder. Am I just meant to walk away? Is this it for us? And, I think what I learned out of that, and that I hope that even, every business owner remembers, is that if you got through that moment and realized you love what you do, then we just have to find a way to love it in any situation and not feel like it's beyond our control, right? So to me, I think the success is that you wake up every day and you love what you do, and that you're trying to get better every day.
The Tom Screen podcast is owned and made possible by Ethical Marketing Service. If your business is struggling with Google or Facebook ads, maybe you're frustrated figuring it out, or there's a performance issue, Ethical Marketing Service has worked on hundreds of accounts, and we can help in this area. We offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, and for every direct account we look after, we sponsor a child in a developing nation with food, water, and education. If you would like to find out if we can help, it's a free, no salesy consultation call, and the link is in the description. Enjoy the episode. Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the episode today, we have Anne Gannon. Anne, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is my pleasure. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes. So I'm the founder of the Largo Group. We specialize in accounting for business owners, really trying to reinvent the way that accounting works for business owners so that it's a more collaborative approach, because I think the traditional way accounting is done just doesn't work for people who own their own business. It's just too long between times you talk to your accountant. And then, especially the last few years with COVID, there's a lot that changes from one year to another. So our approach is really being proactive, like looking at where you are today and, where you want to go in the future. So I founded this in, I've been in public accounting like 20 years. I founded the Largo Group in 2016. But before that, I played professional golf. So I grew up as a golfer. And what I really loved about that journey was just, getting to travel all over the United States and meet so many people. And what I realized is a lot of the people that I met along the way were entrepreneurs. Like, just tends to be that a lot of entrepreneurs play golf. So what I realized in my golf journey is that I was more interested in, their stories, their businesses, like watching them create things, than I was about like the technical part of the golf swing, right? So when I turned pro, it was kind of like, well, golf is great, but I love like talking to these people. Like, how do I do that more? And what I realized is, my passion just was elsewhere. And so, went back to school for an accounting degree and then ended up at the Largo Group.
It is one thing that jumped out at me, Anne. I'm not going to lie. Professional golfer turned accountant has a certain thing about it from a story perspective. There's a lot of, I don't know, is it just me, but I'm sure you've had people ask you about it. So I guess to start off with, you were quite young when you started golf, is that right?
Yeah, so it was probably 10 or 11. Really started to take it seriously in high school. My parents moved to Florida, so all of a sudden golf could be done year round, where before I had lived, in the Northeast where you have winter. But also I think when anyone who's been to Florida, you see a lot of like high level athletes down there, right? Like, it's not uncommon, the Williams sisters were in West Palm. Like, there's lots of great athletes. And what you realize is, golf is one of the sports that, the more you work, the better your results are. Like, really, golf is, I don't think a lot of like, born with it, like natural ability, as much as it's one of those sports that the harder you work and the more diligent you are, the better you get. And so I think my strongest quality is work ethic. And so what I realized is, like, if I practice harder than everyone else, like, I'll get better and improve. And I kind of liked that it was an individual sport. And so, that's really was my journey all through high school. And then when I went to college, same thing, kind of realizing that, if I work extra hours or I work in the winter when no one else is working, then, you'll get the result in the spring.
Well, there's already a lesson there to take away. So, have you said the phrase, the harder I work, the luckier I get?
That is so true in golf. Yes. I think that is one of the truest things in golf. But there really isn't luck, but yes, practice does pay off.
So you start off at 10 or 11. At what point do you think, yeah, I think I could get really good at this?
So it really wasn't until college. I mean, again, in Florida, like you have the best people in the nation coming down to Florida to play golf, so you can feel like, oh, I'm not that good because these kids are really, really good. And the other thing with golf, my parents didn't have a lot of money, so I didn't have the resources that a lot of the people that I was playing against did in high school. So when I went to college, it was eye opening because all of a sudden, as a college athlete, you get all the same resources everybody else does, right? It's less about like what your family has and more about what your school provides to everybody. So the minute I was in college, I'm like, well, this is amazing, right? Like I'll have a practice facility now and I have a trainer if I want it. Like I have all these things that, growing up, my parents just couldn't afford to do. I mean, I used to take the bus after school to like a local muni course, get off with my class. I mean, it was so bad compared to these other kids who had like so much more. But in college, it was the great equalizer. And all of a sudden, I'm like, wow, if I work really, really hard this winter, because coming in, I was kind of like the lower end, like I was lucky to get on a D1 team. And, I was happy to get whatever I could just to have that opportunity. And then that first winter, I practiced every day and nobody really did at that time. I mean, I would like to joke that I was sort of like the Tiger era where golfers didn't realize you could practice a lot and get better. Like he was just starting to come up and like revolutionize because, laughing aside, like the golf team wasn't required to go to the fitness center like the other teams were in my generation. I mean, now it's so different, but back then it was like, oh, we practice like 3 days a week and then, we'll play a couple tournaments, but it wasn't really organized or, really intense. And so I thought, well, if I add that intensity that I see these other sports doing, and now that I have these resources, like anything can happen. And so by my sophomore year, I had won our championship for our division in college. It was really starting to see, some better results. And so that was probably when I first started to think like this is something that I'm good at.
And at what point do you actually turn pro?
Yeah, so my story was my sophomore year in college, I won like our division championship. And then actually, a few months later, my dad passed away, who had been my mentor. And so I really went into kind of the questioning of, am I going to play again? Like, is this, I'm an only child. And so it was a really like mentally tough time to say, like, is this something I even want to pursue anymore? Like, he used to come to all my events. And then I was really thankful to find a coach. I ended up moving back home because my mom was in Florida and just closer to her. And I was really fortunate to find a coach who said, again, my parents didn't have a lot. And he said, if you come when I tell you to come and you do what I tell you to do, I will never charge you. And that was huge. I mean, probably one of the biggest life-changing things because he was at a great course. And so that's what I did. It was like I would wait by the phone and then I'd get the call. I'm like, all right, I got to go. I got to go to my lessons. Like, whatever he told me to do, I would do. And so he was, so great because he knew I was kind of a mess emotionally. And he said, well, you're probably not going to be playing great for the next 12 months because he had lost his dad when he was young. And he said, all right, so we're just going to rebuild your golf swing and make it the best technical swing we can. So when you're ready to go, you're ready to go. And so by my senior year, we kind of had built around like not really worrying about the tournaments because we knew I was okay. I could do it right from my first 2 years. And so by my senior year, I was ranked like third in the state of Florida. And then I was eventually ranked 11th nationally. And all of a sudden had this great technical swing that would hold up under pressure. And so then that was really when like, all right, now we're going to turn pro and see where this goes.
I'm sorry to hear about your dad. The reason you think that he offered to teach you for free was because he empathized with your situation. You think that is why that happened?
Yes, definitely. I think he was such a great guy and really I think it was to see that I had the work ethic, right? Because I think there's a lot of people who say they'll put in the work and then they don't. So I definitely think that he, more than anything, saw that like, I really would show up every day. I mean, I was like crazy about like he called. I was just like drop everything. So I never took advantage. I never took for granted what he was doing for me, and I think that's what made it a really good partnership. Is that I even 4 years in truly appreciated every hour that he gave me. and was just eager to learn whatever he would teach. So I think that was a huge part of it. And then obviously understanding, the mental part of losing a parent.
Well, you sort of dropped into the conversation casually that you were third in Florida, third in the whole state, and then 11th nationally. Like it's no big deal. How did that feel when you found out that metric, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, I mean, it was huge because I think it was the first time where you really saw, the years of effort, paying off. Because in golf, it's like, you have a great tournament, then you've had tournaments, you have a great tournament, it's so mentally taxing just because you're constantly putting yourself out there, and then, you can have a bad result and then a good result. So it's hard to see that you're improving. But my senior summer, when I actually ended up winning one of the larger amateur championship, which is Women's Eastern. There's, back then there were like 4 majors for women's amateur golf. And so winning the Women's Eastern really put me out there, in front of the rest of the, great players. And so that really felt like it was, okay, I belong here now. I've kind of proven that I belong here.
So would you say that was the competition that really stands out for you in terms of accomplishments?
Yes. Yes. Even now, it's probably my proudest point in golf.
Well, it's great to hear about it, but I'd love to hear more. How many rounds is it for that competition?
54-hole stroke play.
Okay, so would you say, are you in the lead in the last day?
I was leading by 4, which is probably my most terrifying day. Yes.
And what's going through your mind before you tee off on the last day?
Yeah, so just, I think the thing with golf that even now, I think there's just so many life lessons, is just trying so hard not to get ahead of yourself, right? Knowing that you just have to play every shot for that shot and not think about, what the result is. And, also being out in front, because I was in the lead pairing because I was leading going in, which was very, I had not been in many like lead pairings going into the last day. So just, I think the biggest lesson there was, and overall, I think in competitive sports is just that, like, if you question your belief in yourself, it's a lot harder. So you really had to go in thinking like, I belong here. There's no difference between me and these other players, and just really own it, right? Like own the situation and say that I'm going to enjoy it and see what happens. So I wouldn't say I was perfect at that, but that was the mindset, going in and just, trying to feel comfortable. Because I think that was the other thing that my coach was so good at, was just trying to say like, this isn't the last time you want to be in the situation, right? So like you have to learn from it and be more comfortable every time you do it. So just looking at it as a learning opportunity.
And as you're playing the last round, are you aware of, is there like scoreboards up? Are you aware of how you're doing?
I mean, you kind of know, because you knew mathematically there were only like a couple of girls there were probably like 4 or 5 that could really win, just based on, the scores. So you kind of knew, like, obviously the girl in my group, and then I think there were the 2 in front of us. But yeah, so you knew that you needed to play okay to make it happen.
And do you mind telling the story of the last hole of that round?
Yeah, my hands were shaking first of all, and then I thankfully hit the ball on the green, because there's like tons of people watching at that point, and they had like a balcony area. Some of the members had showed up, and so I still remember my putter was just shaking, and I'm like, all right, I think as long as I three putter worse, right? Like just, or 3 putter better. But ideally you want to make a 2 putt. So I ended up 2 putting, but I just remember my putter was just shaking, and there was nothing you could do to calm down at that point. But ended up okay, and that was good.
And what happened after that?
Yeah, so I won, which was really exciting. And then, I think what was interesting is it again just kind of changed how I knew of like inner confidence, right? I think that event gave me such inner confidence in anything I really did in golf after that, because you always knew, like, I was incredibly nervous. It was terrifying, but I did it, right? And I think that was the biggest lesson.
I do want to sort of go over what you mentioned about the fact that at some stage you do think about, I don't know whether this is for me anymore, and you start thinking about accounting. But whilst we're on like the high of your golf game, I'd like to know if there's anything which you learned from golf which you use in your life, any lessons that you've taken away.
Definitely. I mean, I think, when I first left golf, I tried to keep them very separate, right? It was like, all right, I'm not Anne the golfer. Like, I just want to go and be Anne and find out what else I want to do with my life. So even when I went into accounting for the first time, I worked at a firm, my first couple of jobs were at, larger accounting firms. And I always just wanted to be Anne. And I think what I realized was that my background has been so different, right? Like I really hadn't been, doing internships or all the things that like other accountants have been doing because I've been off doing golf. And so for the longest time, I kind of looked at that as like, I have catch up to do, or I have to work harder than everybody else because I wasn't doing those things. And it really wasn't until COVID that I started to put the two together, which is, I know, crazy, right? But, for us, I mean, we specialize in restaurants, so hospitality. And our business model that I built intentionally was monthly billing, right? So my clients pay us monthly. And so when COVID hit, in March 2020, we were as impacted as everybody, right? Because I have 90% of my clients that I don't know if they're going to pay us in April. And I don't have long-term contracts. So I was completely exposed. And I remember just thinking those early days, because it was so shattering to have to put on a brave face, talk to our clients, like say, oh, it's going to be fine. We're going to figure it out when you don't really know if you're going to, right? You're trying your best, but everybody's world is shattered. And I remember thinking, this is so mental, right? Like this is so mental of mindset, because it would be so easy, just like a bad round, it would be so easy just completely go down that rabbit hole of like, this is horrible. And, and I remember watching the clients that were able to get on the phone and be like, there's going to be opportunity. Like, I know this is going to be great. And then there are people who just couldn't see the forest through the trees. And I'm like, wow, like this is just like a bad round of golf, right? Like if I can't clear my head, I will not get through the day. Like I will not have a good day. I will not perform. And all of a sudden it was like, wow, like I know how to do this, right? I know all the steps. So if we can all do this and educate my clients on mindset and all that matters is today and making sure you're looking ahead, not looking behind, those are the same lessons that you have in sports. And so, all of a sudden it was like, wow, like I might not have been doing internships, but I know how to turn around a bad round of golf. And I think if we do those things here, we could have the same result. And so that really was the first time that I was like, wow, I think I do have a very unique approach in sort of owning that rather than feeling like you're the outlier.
It's a great analogy. I do have to ask though, do you think that there are some restaurants alive now because of the fact that you helped them through that?
I mean, I think obviously they did it on their own, but I think the mindset, the discussion of mindset, the awareness of mindset. Yes, I do feel like I was a lifeline for some of our clients. I mean, there were people who I literally would talk to same time every week, and we wouldn't really have much to talk about. I mean, we have like the basics, but it was more just like checking in, like talking them up, right? Like just staying in their ear, like it's okay, like this week's gonna be better. I mean, I had one client who, when he first started, they were down. Their revenue was 34% of what it had been the year before. They were in like a tourist area. All the tourists had gone home. Everybody was canceling their trips. And that really historically had been, their sweet spot was like March and April of the year. And that kind of carried them on for the rest of the year. And his mindset was so good because he didn't get frustrated, didn't get angry, because it would be so easy to be angry, right? Like he's invested his life. He's been doing this 20 years. Like now this is the month that carries you cash flow wise for the whole year, and it's gone. And he's like, you know what? Our goal is by the end of the year, we're going to be back to 75%. That's all we're going to focus on. And every week he would have it, and it would get a little better and a little better. And all of a sudden, like by the time we got to October, November, like they were right there and they hit it. And it was just like watching him not be mad had and not let the frustration get the best of him. And just he stayed positive for his team, and he never let them see him sweat, right? He always just had like, it's okay. We're working on this. We're going to be fine. And I mean, it was such a lesson in just, mindset and really setting that goal ahead rather than getting frustrated about the past.
Well done. Anyway, I'm glad that a bad game of golf or a potentially bad game of golf has helped many restaurants.
Many bad rounds of golf, yes.
So why is it that you get, I don't know, in terms of why you leave golf to go and do accounting, would you say that it's because your passion is accounting, or would you say it's because you got tired of what you were doing?
No, I think I knew probably even before I turned pro that golf wasn't something I could see myself doing forever. I mean, I never had the technical love. Like, golfers are like scientists, right? Like, you really have the people who are great at golf, for the most part, right? The pros are so into like the technical movement of the club and I mean angles, and I just was never like that. Like, I loved playing the game and I loved the journey of the travel part of it and getting to go different places. And I loved the challenge of trying to be the best. But fundamentally, like, the idea of that being your life or that's all you're talking about, really was not in my gut something that I wanted to do forever. So I think, it was the hardest conversation I've ever had was with my pro, like teaching pro, to say that after 1 year I was walking away. Because I think to him, it was like, well, why not try for 5 years, right? Like, you don't, obviously there's going to be a huge learning curve. You can't judge it after year one. But to me, it was like, I know that feeling in my gut. And to me, another year would just be wasted because I don't love being out here and spending 6 months grinding to get better anymore. So, I think when I started to look back on what I did love, because that was a huge decision, because everything I had done had been golf. I mean, I used to take my classes in college at night just like to practice during the day. I mean, I had changed my life for golf for so long. But when I first started thinking about, okay, well, what do I like to do? Well, I really always loved business. I used to listen to CNBC or what, I always was interested in, stories of entrepreneurs. And, so, I kept thinking about that. And then one of my professors in college actually had great advice where she really said, accounting is very much like economics, because my undergrad had been in economics. But she's just like, it's just a skill. If you can learn the accounting skill with the love of economics, it really can give you a tool to go and do whatever you want. And so once I started getting into the accounting classes, I realized if you really dig into accounting, that's what it is, right? Like, you're just learning, the language of business. But if you're interested in the business and not just the accounting, you'll be a great accountant. Because a lot of accountants just get into like the technical part, but miss the big picture. But if you can see the big picture and know the technical part, then you really you have the key, right? So I realized like the economics wasn't such a bad thing. And, and then when I got out into my first public accounting job, I had a great mentor who had the partner at the firm who kind of thought like me. He had been an economics major first. And so seeing there was somebody else, I'm like, all right, like this can work. I'm excited about this.
And at what point do you decide to sort of go out on your own?
Yeah. So, I mean, I loved working, it was a great experience to be at a firm and to be in public accounting. But, I quickly realized that I like the small business client, right? Like, a lot of people who go into accounting, like corporate, right? The corporate structure, the bigger jobs, the, public jobs that are out, trading on the stock exchange. And to me, I loved the owner, like having the relationship with the owner and the smaller jobs. And that, I realized those jobs need so much more attention than these bigger jobs that have accounting staff or have a CFO. And so to me, in a larger public firm, you really can't spend the time with the owners on smaller jobs, because then their margins don't work, right? Like, fundamentally in accounting, it's billable hours. So the whole goal is that you spend the least amount of time on the job, get it done, and then move on. And I really wanted to develop more relationships and be able to help people get better, right? Make their business better. Because to me, it's such a disconnect that the billable hours, you're not allowed to really spend time with those jobs. And yet if you did, they might have a better result next year. So I just felt like there's such a disconnect with the, entrepreneurs or small business owners. And it's really an underserved group of people. So to me, being able to go out on my own, I wanted to have kids too. And, in public accounting, kids is hard. So it was sort of a good time. I was pregnant with my first son and I thought, you know what, I'm going to just spend a year or two with the clients that I had. I had a few clients that I was working on by myself at the time and just said, let me explore what does this different way look like? Because, everyone thought I was crazy, even my husband. And I'm like, it can be done differently. He's like, you don't even know. Like, you've been there like 5 years. These people have been there 20 years. Like, how do you know it can be done better? And I'm like, I know it can. Like, I see it. I know it can. You just have to figure it out. And so that was really, kind of the first couple of years with my son at home. And then, really seeing that it was working. And then, just started to kind of grow a niche of people who were looking for the type of accounting that I wanted to provide.
And what would you say your biggest wins are?
I would say, I think, I joke now that I was talking about cash flow before COVID, but I would say in business, our biggest win was COVID because we didn't sit back. I think a lot of people in the accounting community, and rightly so, again, the more technical, we're sat back and we're waiting for guidance from the government. And my stance, probably because we had to, because we were as exposed as anyone, was like, we're all in this together and we're going down swinging. Like, we are going to fight to get out of this. And that's exactly what we did. We went all in. We did weekly webinars to whoever wanted it. We had, thousands of people signing up at the beginning because they were all at home and they didn't know what to do. And just, we were very honest, very transparent. Like, hey, nobody knows, right? Like, anything you're reading online, nobody knows. No one knows how long it's going to last. No one knows if there's going to be government help, but let's talk through it. Let's figure it out. Let's all brainstorm. And, those first 8 weeks were life-changing to everyone, right? We really found a group that just worked together to figure it out. And then with that, we really just started to completely reinvent our model. We used to be pre-COVID, like monthly accounting. We send out monthly reports. We still to this day send out weekly because monthly is just too long to wait. They have to have information about their business every week. And so we transformed. We were transparent about it. We were open to doing it, the way our client wanted. If they want to see something, then we'll get it to you. Because at the end of the day, our lesson to them was, guys, you can't even be waiting for us, right? This is your business and you have to know exactly where you are every week in order to be the best business owner you can. So my job is to get you that information, but your job is to look at it, right? And like, you have to own your role as much as I own my role as your accountant. And I think that was the biggest win for everybody. And for the model that we've created was just, there's ownership on both sides. We're working together, but we're not going to let a week go by without knowing where we are.
And what's next for you, Anne?
I don't know. Well, I think, what's exciting is the model lives beyond COVID, right? Because originally it was just like, oh, we're doing weekly for a little bit. And, that's turned into like 2 or 3 years. But, I think what's next for me is helping. Obviously, I don't think in many ways now is just like COVID for the restaurant. Now, I'm sure other industries would have a different story to tell. But for restaurants, this is really as challenging as COVID with inflation. And so I feel like the next few months for me are getting back out there to them and letting them know that, that they're not alone, because there's an incredible amount of frustration with the inflation, especially on the labor side. I mean, on average, they're probably spending $6 or $7 an hour for every employee. So if you have 50 employees, that's an incredible amount of money that you weren't spending 2 years ago. And in restaurants, your customers have a price that they're going to pay for pizza. And it's probably not $15 more than it was 2 years ago. So the entire model has shifted. And I think there's a lot of independent restaurants, mostly who we work with, that you really have to figure it out for yourself, right? You don't have a brand like a Chick-fil-A or a McDonald's that's going to figure it out for you. Like you have to figure out your model in order to survive. And unlike COVID, I mean, as scary as COVID was, once you got through initially, there was always the hope of, okay, we're getting better. Like it'll get better. We just have to wait it out and, kind of improve every week. And I think right now we don't see that, right? Like nobody really knows when the inflation will subside or what happens next. So to me, I think it's really turning to your clients and coming up with solutions as we get to the end of the year so that they're not just waiting around for things to improve, but that they're proactive as we go into next year.
There's a lot of good stuff in this episode, lots of learnings. So I appreciate the value. In terms of, as a question I ask everyone that comes on, and the question is, what does success mean to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say to me, I think success is, loving what you do every day. And I think what I realized in COVID, because, I had the moment just like everyone else, I think any business owner had, which was, why am I doing this? Right? This is incredibly hard. And it just became a lot harder. Am I just meant to walk away? Is this it for us? And, I think what I learned out of that, and that I hope that even, every business owner remembers, is that if you got through that moment and realized you love what you do, then we just have to find a way to love it in any situation and not feel like it's beyond our control, right? So to me, I think the success is that you wake up every day and you love what you do and that you're trying to get better every day.
And based on that criteria, would you say you're a successful person?
Yeah, I think so. Yes. But similar to golf, I think the lesson is we all have to think that we're successful, right? Like I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, we're like, you shy away from the word being successful, right? But I think one thing that I definitely learned in golf is you have to own where you are, right? So if we don't see ourselves in the final group, then we'll never get there.
Is there anything I should have asked you about today?
No, this is great.
Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, so I would just tell every, business owner, entrepreneur out there that, I think the biggest lesson is owning every week of your business. Right? Like forget the news, turn off the news, forget what everyone says is happening, and really focus on your journey and improving every week.
Well, I loved hearing about your story. For those people who want to connect with you or hire you, where do they go?
Yes. So check out our website, thelargogroup.com. We offer lots of resources. We have free webinars every month. And we're also on social media as well.
And thank you for being a great guest today.
Thank you.